The Phantom Menace is now regarded by many as a disappointing movie, ushering in an era of computer effects that superseded story. Lambasted for its cartoon character comic relief, ill-judged child Vader, and a plot that centred on the exciting drama of trade negotiations.
Which started right here with the taxation of trade routes.
But there was a time when the prospect of a new Star Wars film was the biggest event in film history.
They understand I'm a Star Wars freak and this is something I have to do.
A glorious time before a million childhood dreams cried out in anger and were never silenced.
How sweet it is. It's very, very tasty, especially with these tickets in my hand.
This is not just the story of a dream that was left like a limbless, smouldering mess on the banks of a Mustafar lava river. It is also the story of how new technology changed filmmaking, fandom, and the movie-going experience forever. The story begins a long time ago when George Lucas, fresh off the successful premiere at Cannes of THX 1138, signed a multi-picture deal with United Artists. He pitched two films, one based on his childhood growing up in Modesto, California, and the other a Flash Gordon-esque fantasy film.
He originally wanted to do Flash Gordon. I'm real thankful it didn't work out, or Nick Nolte would be sitting here instead of me, you know.
United Artists passed on both, but Universal picked up the 60s nostalgia film American Graffiti.
I just saw a vision!
The production was not without its drama. Despite positive test screenings, Universal wanted to edit down the 112-minute film.
This is a joke, right?
Producer Francis Ford Coppola tried to buy the film to release as Lucas had intended, but Universal refused, making minor arbitrary cuts before its theatrical release.
You take care of yourself, man.
Nonetheless, the film was a critical and commercial success, earning back over 150 times its budget at the box office.
Stand by for justice!
So when Lucas pitched Universal with his Flash Gordon-inspired sci-fi film, The Journal of Wills, they obviously rejected it for being a little strange. Producer Allan Ladd Jr., while admitting he didn't understand the sci-fi soap opera, believed in the talent of the young filmmaker and convinced Fox to invest.
There'll be no one to stop us this time.
Lucas set about writing the screenplay, a screenplay that rapidly grew out of control before being sliced up and renamed The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Saga 1, Star Wars. Lucas at the time hoped to be able to go back and tell the full story, and so, as part of his contract negotiations, he took a pay cut to keep sequel and merchandising rights. The film, eventually titled simply Star Wars, faced studio interference as budget started to run over. Meanwhile, publicity supervisor Charles Lippincott was challenged with selling a movie that Fox's own research said no one wanted to see.
Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
In 1976, Comic-Con was only 6 years old, and far from today's mass media takeover, the layout was simple card tables, folding chairs, and handmade signs. But if Star Wars was going to be a success, they had to get the name out there. Lippincott, accompanied by comic book writer and artist Roy Thomas and Howard Chaykin, hit the sci-fi convention circuit to talk to anyone who would listen. Far from the packed halls of Comic-Con today, the first Star Wars presentations were delivered to, at most, a couple of hundred people with a slideshow.
How much money do you have to make before you break even?
Well, the picture will cost a little over $7 million. We would have to gross 18 or 19 million to break even. That's one of the reasons why more science fiction pictures aren't made.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody go see it twice.
Attendees also had the opportunity to drop $1.75 on the first Star Wars collectible, an A4 poster drawn by Howard Chaykin that now sells for many thousands in mint condition. In the build-up to release, cinemas were not interested in screening the film, and Fox had to demand that if they wanted the much-anticipated The Other Side of Midnight, they would have to take Star Wars 2.
I
a good many people who've had their fill of telephone bills and all other aspects of reality are finding a futuristic way of putting their problems aside for a while.
Star Wars was released in the summer of 1977 and was greeted by queues around the block, breaking box office records.
The film, which has already outstripped the legendary Jaws as a money spinner in America, tells an outer space war story.
I think it was good.
Just good?
No, fantastic.
Kenner, who had won the contract to make toys for the film by virtue of being the only toy company who were interested, struggled to meet the demands of children who longed to relive their cinematic experience at home. The lack of any action figures by the time Christmas rolled around led to Kenner selling an empty box with a voucher to receive the toys as soon as they were available. Over the next 8 years, Kenner produced over 100 unique action figures and sold over 300 million.
Now you can get this new 4LOM action figure free for 5 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars action figures.
Now, question number 8. George Lucas, the man responsible for these movies, makes more money than... And the answer, you. That's right. He makes more money than you.
The success of the film and the lucrative merchandising rights Lucas had negotiated gave him the financial resources to step away from the studio system and self-fund the planned sequels. In a 1978 interview with Time magazine, as production was ramping up on the sequel, Lucas, who had stepped away from the director's chair, announced that, along with Star Wars 2, he was planning 10 more films that would culminate in his directorial return for the 12th installment planned for 2001. For a young Star Wars fan in 1978, there was no internet, so for news on the saga, fans had to hope that magazines like Starlog and Starburst would print a story. Alternatively, you could join the Star Wars fan club that published a quarterly newsletter with the latest updates and interviews. In August of 1978, the previously mentioned 12 films was down to 9, with the upcoming Empire Strikes Back being the second film in the saga. Later, Lucas retconned this story to say that Star Wars, now retitled A New Hope, was always the 4th film in the saga. Lucas also declared that the first 3 films would deal with the friendship of a young Obi-Wan and Darth Vader.
Anakin Skywalker, meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Today, when we know very little about upcoming sequels, it is strange to read Lucas revealing the focus of the prequel trilogy and the title of the 3rd film in the saga, Revenge of the Jedi.
Is that correct? Revenge or Return? All right.
Before Empire Strikes Back had even been released. Without an easy way to share information, crucial spoilers are also kept hidden. The best example is David Prowse revealing the climax of Empire. Darth Vader and Luke are hooked up in a do-or-die lightsaber duel when Luke learns that Darth is in fact his long-lost father. Printed in a local paper, it was quickly forgotten, and one of cinema's greatest reveals was left intact. In late summer of '77, faced with a number of making-ofs and spin-off books, Lucas sat down with then-director of publications Carol Teitelman to flesh out the Star Wars universe and settle on some continuity for the expanding saga. While some details changed, Leia had 2 much younger brothers for example, other details are strikingly similar to what was eventually presented in the prequels. Lucas speaks of the Galactic Senate and how the Chancellor could only serve 1 4-year term, before a newly elected Chancellor started buying off senators with the help of large intergalactic trade companies.
Into the bureaucrats, the true rulers of the Republic, and on the payroll of the Trade Federation, I might add.
In order to cut bureaucracy, more power was handed to the Chancellor, who was ultimately made Emperor for life.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
As in the films, the Emperor had created a secret army, and, led by Darth Vader, the Jedi were all but destroyed, except for Obi-Wan and Luke's father. There is no indication in these notes that the Emperor was a Sith Lord, and in the annotated screenplays it implies that the Emperor had become a recluse, and the likes of Grand Moff Tarkin were using the name and the threat of the Emperor to forward their own power-hungry desires.
The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
The concept of the Force is also explored, with those being attuned to the Force having more midi-chlorians in their cells. but anyone could learn the Force if they were willing to work hard at it. In a more public arena, Lucas shared with Rolling Stone how Vader became more machine than man. Vader kills Luke's father, then Ben and Vader have a confrontation, just like they have in Star Wars, and Ben almost kills Vader. As a matter of fact, he falls into a volcanic pit and gets fried and is one destroyed being. This would be the scant bit of information fans were privy to, feeding their imaginations for over 2 decades. An epic lightsaber duel over the mouth of a volcano. In interviews, Mark Hamill would often be quizzed about future films, and when the cast visited kids' television show Blue Peter in 1980,
any kind of introduction. Whoa, Goldie, careful.
We get the first mention of prequels as related to Star Wars.
We finish off the trilogy, then we go back 20 years, and we do the story of young Darth Vader and the young Alec Guinness character.
Like a prequel?
That's right.
Mark would also frequently mention coming back to the role in the new millennium.
George has talked to me marginally about doing something at the turn of the century in the last trilogy, but it wouldn't be on the same plane of existence.
I know why I'm supposed to be here. Why? Because I got nowhere else to go.
But as Return of the Jedi made its way into cinemas...
In fact, it won't open for 2 more days, but already the lines are down the block.
Speculation about more films was dampened.
Well, George is very, very tired.
No, I think they were considering doing the prequels, 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know that they're going to do that now. I think, Mr. Lucas is very tired.
Yeah.
Lucas had recently adopted a daughter, and with his divorce in '83, he pulled back from movie making to be a father. It had been 10 years since Star Wars first hit the screen, but rather than a celebration of the first decade of Star Wars, the milestone was instead marked by George Lucas putting the official Star Wars fan club on a break. In the years that followed Return of the Jedi, the newsletter, which had once been filled with Star Wars news, now more often spoke of other Lucasfilm projects like Indiana Jones, The Labyrinth, and something called Howard the Duck. Despite Ewok movies and cartoons, and the opening of the Star Tours ride in Disneyland early in 1987, without a new movie in sight, interest in the saga was fading. The sale of Star Wars action figures dwindled with a limited run of the fabled Last 16, with Yakface only selling outside America. In what has come to be known as the Dark Years, Star Wars merchandise disappeared from the shelves, and Kenner, who only had to pay Lucasfilm $10,000 a year to keep their lucrative toy rights, let a payment slip.
I give up. I give up.
Those dark days were short-lived. In 1991, Star Wars returned with the best-selling book Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. X-Wing launched on the PC a couple of years later, selling over 100,000 copies on its debut weekend, proving there was still a huge appetite for the saga. First word of the prequels finally being written was hidden in the Star Wars screen entertainment software for Windows. You could finally ditch your flying toaster's screensaver in favour of Star Wars ship schematics or rolling Star Wars text. The latter, if run for 20 minutes, revealed a secret message from George Lucas. Such a glorious Easter egg would now be uncovered and shared within hours of release, but with very few people in the early 90s having access to the internet, the announcement remained a secret. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Lucas's effects house Industrial Light and Magic finished work on Jurassic Park, and with it a new era of computer-generated special effects were born. With a renewed interest in the saga, and seeing CGI dinosaurs fully integrated into a live-action movie, Lucas announced publicly that he could finally realise his vision for the Star Wars prequels.
Well, it's you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, and Mrs. Anakin Skywalker.
The fact that Kenner no longer owned very favourable rights to make Star Wars toys was purely coincidental in Lucas deciding that the time was right to return to a galaxy far, far away. From the earliest days of cinema, filmmakers have been using special effects as a way to tell more imaginative stories. But by the late 70s, there were few people left working in the effects industry, and knowledge gained from productions like 2001: A Space Odyssey was in danger of being lost. So when George Lucas wanted aerial dogfights in outer space, he had to develop the technology to pull it off. When Industrial Light and Magic was formed, the average age was just 25, and it was made up mostly of students, industrial designers, architects and engineers, rather than film industry veterans. But it was this fresh approach that allowed effects to go to places they had never been before. Star Wars resurrected the use of VistaVision, and was the first film to use a motion-controlled camera, dubbed the Dijkstraflex, allowing the exact same camera moves to be repeated over and over. For Empire Strikes Back, ILM created Go Motion, building on the stop-motion techniques pioneered by Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen. In 1982, ILM used computers to generate the Genesis sequence in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and a couple of years later produced the first completely computer-generated character in Young Sherlock Holmes, followed by the first use of digital morphing in Willow. Off the big screen, George Lucas was using the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles as a testing ground for new digital effects. Over the course of the series, Lucas pioneered the use of digital crowds, digital environments, and digital editing. Edit Droid had been developed in 1984, showing off a new era of non-linear editing. With all the footage converted to a digital file, editors were able to scroll through footage and find alternate takes much more quickly.
I can experiment as much as I want and save everything. It's like a word processor, only for images.
This method of editing is now so commonplace and accessible, it is hard to imagine a time before it existed. While Jurassic Park was a very visual game changer for the audience, what was happening in editing behind the scenes was every bit as important in Lucas deciding that he could now realise his vision for a new Star Wars.
All I need is an idea.
For those who remember, for those who will never forget, and for a whole new generation who will experience it for the very first time.
But first, a hungry Star Wars audience was going to be treated to new THX remastered editions of the original trilogy, because the digitally remastered editions from a few years ago were no longer good enough. Along with the Laserdiscs, a collector's edition was released, packed with artwork, the scripts, and a ton of special features. While the 4 videotapes were in no way as convenient to navigate as DVDs, Star Wars was once again breaking new ground in what viewers expected from home entertainment.
The original Star Wars trilogy on video, one last time.
Cryptically advertised as the original One Last Time, it's certainly strange to sell a remastered film while at the same time advertising that an even better remastered version is only a couple of years away. At this point, Lucas had only intended to clean up Star Wars before moving on to a rigorous back-to-back shooting schedule, releasing the prequels in consecutive years starting in 1998, utilising the cost-saving measures developed on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
The Star Wars Power of the Force collection, when Darth Vader and his stormtroopers attack.
After a 10-year absence and a new, less favourable deal with Lucasfilm, 1995 also saw the return of Star Wars action figures to the toy shelf. Following the trend at the time of pumped-up superhero action figures, the classic Star Wars characters got a steroid-infused makeover.
This action figure has been working out. This one is like my chest, it's a sofa bed too.
Despite the poor likenesses and poses that made it near impossible for some figures to stand, the new line was a huge hit.
The only universe with deluxe crowd-controlled stormtroopers with thruster pack and capture claw.
But with so few action figures to choose from, even the smallest production line change would make a figure instantly collectible. Back in 1978, the action figures for Obi-Wan, Darth Vader and Luke came with double telescoping lightsabers, a fragile gimmick that didn't hold up to active play, so was quickly replaced, making the originals highly desirable. In 1995, a long saber variation was more confusing, but no less sought after. The lightsabers ordinarily packed in were so long that they off-balanced the figures and were quickly replaced with shorter sabers. In the transition period, short sabers appeared in long saber trays, leading to some figures exchanging for many times their retail price in comic book stores and the new online auction site eBay. Other popular variations at the time included tan-vested Luke, closed-fisted Han, half-circle Boba Fett, incontinent Wampa, and monkey-faced Leia. With an eye on what collectors imagined would be a lucrative case of history repeating itself, it became popular to buy two of everything, one to open and one to save. Meanwhile, Topps, who had produced bubblegum trading cards back in the 70s, occasionally featuring more than the filmmakers intended, returned to Star Wars with beautiful wide-vision collectible trading cards, featuring stills from the movie on the front and behind-the-scenes information on the back. A Star Wars collectible game to rival Magic the Gathering gained popularity, with rare cards such as Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine selling for over $200.
Prepare yourself for Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire.
Shadows of the Empire was given a launch more akin to a movie than a console game, with a trailer, a novel, comics, trading cards, action figures, making-of book, and soundtrack. An excellent deep dive into this spin-off was recently created by Mr. Sunday Movies and is well worth a look.
Dare to enter the shadows. Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. Figures and vehicles each sold separately from Kenner.
But this was nothing compared to what was in store for the 20th anniversary.
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
Now, for its 20th anniversary, the adventure of a lifetime returns to the big screen.
In 1997, Star Wars returned to the cinemas, cleaned up, sound remixed, and boasting new scenes and enhanced special effects. Improvements from digital compositing, first used in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, was evident throughout the trilogy. In Star Wars, computer-generated X-Wing fighters made shots possible that could not be achieved with models. Cloud City now featured extended three-dimensional digital sets and computer-generated characters that had far more movement than these stiff rod puppets were added into Jabba's palace. While not all improvements were welcomed, it marked a definitive change in how the special effects for the prequel trilogy would be accomplished. Return of the Jedi also gave audiences the first glimpse of the city planet Coruscant, a location Lucas had long wanted in a Star Wars film, which was now possible and would be a key destination throughout the prequel trilogy.
What the special edition really underlines, though, is that if you haven't seen Star Wars on the big screen, and most people haven't, then you've never really seen it at all, and you should.
The films were heavily promoted on the recently launched StarWars.com website that provided behind-the-scenes articles and the 5-part featurette Anatomy of a Dewback. This was at a time when other movie websites were a technicolor visual assault of frames, GIFs and backgrounds that made text practically illegible. Writer Dan Madsen relaunched the official fan club, with the Lucasfilm Fan Club magazine now rebranded as the Star Wars Insider, and, like Bantha Tracks had done in the past, the new magazine would provide updates on the much-anticipated new films. Despite being 20 years old, Star Wars: A New Hope went on to become the 5th highest-grossing film in 1997, earning more at the domestic box office than the likes of Disney's Hercules, James Bond's Tomorrow Never Dies, and even doubling the box office of Luc Besson's sci-fi The Fifth Element. Star Wars once again took the crown for the highest-grossing film of all time, back from Steven Spielberg.
Hey! Come back, I just knew it. Well, I was gonna let you get all the credit and take all the reward.
Hey, I knew that was more to you than money.
Star Wars wasn't just raking in money from movies and merchandise. While there could be no product placement in space, this didn't stop Lucasfilm from signing a 5-year deal with PepsiCo, worth an estimated $2 billion. The deal ensured that the Star Wars logo would be slapped on cereals, soft drinks and chip packets. In the hysteria that came with the 20th anniversary, Taco Bell went full Star Wars with multiple promotions, including a Feel the Force game where you could win everything from a taco to a Star Wars branded Hummer. The toys packed in with kids' meals were instant collectibles, rivaling that of the Beanie Baby craze that was keeping the Happy Meals flying over the counter at the McDonald's across the street. It seems almost certain that by the end of 1997, attics and basements were filled with mint-in-package toys that were going to provide a comfortable early retirement to thousands. Ultimately, 20 years on, a collector would be lucky to get back the price they paid for an individual figure and would lose hundreds if they opted to sell the collection as a job lot. While waiting for Episode 1, another film would step up to fill the Star Wars void.
Troops is filmed on location with the men of the Imperial Forces. All suspects are guilty, period.
Troops, a fan-made parody in the vein of Cops, premiered at the 1997 San Diego Comic-Con before picking up distribution on Star Wars fan site theforce.net. The film is credited with kickstarting the fan film movement, as digital distribution allowed independent artists their first opportunity to reach a wider audience.
And Luke is like, I want to go to the academy. And he says, well, I need you for the harvest this year. And then he starts talking about Obi-Wan and his father.
The film itself was given the Pioneer Award from Lucasfilm at the first official Star Wars Fan Film Awards. A cultural shift that had been growing for a few years suddenly hit Hollywood with a bang.
Harry Knowles has become one of Hollywood's most formidable forces.
The internet had made the sharing of information easy and anonymous. This allowed on-set rumours and behind-the-scenes drama to reach a mass audience almost as soon as it happened. The industry trade magazines were about to be usurped by a 25-year-old college dropout working from his bedroom in Austin, Texas.
It's a little scary to me, but like when Lethal Weapon 4 was filming the gas station blowing up in LA, I had like 76 people on set, you know, that were covering that. I mean, that's like double what CNN had to cover OJ.
Harry Knowles had taken his hobby of scouring news groups for movie gossip and turned it into a website called Ain't It Cool News. The site fast got a reputation as a one-stop shop for the hottest entertainment news and rumours. A network of industry spies would reveal casting decisions, scripts, release dates, reshoots, and early reviews from test screenings. The effects of the site were double-edged for the industry. Studio executives blamed the financial failure of Batman and Robin on the early reviews Harry published, but conversely, the positive reviews from Titanic flipped the negative publicity that the film had garnered from its ballooning budget and release delays.
I wanted focus to shift from being about how much money and about the problems to being what is the film like? Is the film good?
As production ramped up on Episode 1, Ain't It Cool News would be a constant source of unofficial leaks. The title caused much speculation. Fans had been misled before by Revenge of the Jedi, but in this modern age, a title's worth would be determined by whether or not Lucasfilm had registered a domain name for it. Balance of the Force, Genesis, Children of the Force were batted around. Blue Harvest 2 was mentioned as a rather obvious codename, and cryptically, Red Tails made it into the mix, a title that would later be used for the World War II film about Tuskegee Airmen that Lucas had been developing since the late 80s. Lucas had already begun assembling a crew drawn extensively from the Young Indiana Jones chronicles, including producer Rick McCallum, director of photography David Tattersall, production designer Gavin Bouquet, and screenwriter Frank Darabont, who ultimately left the project, with Carrie Fisher coming on board instead to punch up some of Lucas's dialogue.
But like any abused child wearing a metal bikini changed to a giant slug about to die, I keep coming back for more.
Soon, shooting locations in Tunisia and Italy were announced, and a deal signed with Leavesden Studios ensured Star Wars would return to England for principal photography. Potential cast was the topic of constant speculation, as casting director Robin Gurland travelled the globe seeking the actors who would fill the roles of the most anticipated film in history. When Lucas was seen talking to Winona Ryder at a Beverly Hills award party, she had clearly been cast as the future mother of Luke Skywalker. But then someone confirmed Ellen Muth had the role. New York Daily News reported that model Nina Brosh just nailed a part, possibly based solely on the leaked casting call for a Eurasian actress, while Natalie Portman revealed she had auditioned for an aggressive female warrior named Bonjock. Kenneth Branagh was frequently mentioned as being in the frame for the young Obi-Wan, while another rumour said Alec Guinness was to return to the role with the aid of digital de-aging.
Hello there.
Playing it less cagey, Ewan McGregor told Entertainment Weekly that what he was supposed to say about his rumoured casting as Obi-Wan is that they were in negotiations. But the truth was he wanted to do it, they wanted him to do it, and so he was doing it.
So you're 24 years old, you're going to be a big star. You ready for it?
I'm 24 years old and going to make a film in America, that's all.
Jake Lloyd, who had his first audition at 6 years old, was now old enough to play the 9-year-old future Sith Lord. Liam Neeson was cast as a Jedi Knight. Samuel L. Jackson, appearing on British talk show TFI Friday, begged Lucas for a role in the film, even if it was just a stormtrooper. 6 months later, he appeared on Letterman.
Great, and as soon as I finish Jackie Brown, I'm off to London to do a little piece in Star Wars.
But when pressed on who he was playing...
I actually have no idea. He told me he'd seen my work and he knew I was a good actor, yada, yada. He said, but, you know, in this one, you'll probably be saying, look out, run, duck, go this way, do that. So I may end up somewhere between Lando Calrissian's great-grandfather and a Wookiee.
In fact, he had been cast as Jedi Master Mace Windu, a role later rumoured to be going to Tupac Shakur before his murder. Returning cast members Kenny Baker and Anthony Daniels confirmed that the droid double act would be back. Anthony Daniels revealing that while he couldn't talk about the plot, in the first act he turns up with a machine gun killing everyone. It's a very short film, he added. Frank Oz was back as Yoda, and Ian McDiarmid, who played the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, would be returning to play a younger version of the character.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Like the films that had preceded it, Lucas planned to push the effects to encompass a fully CGI character named Jar Jar Binks.
Misa called Jar Jar Binks!
Michael Jackson lobbied hard for the role, but his insistence on wearing prosthetics and Lucas's feeling that he could overshadow the film meant that the role would be played by Ahmed Best instead.
Like James Earl Jones, do you think you're going to be down in history as one of the most famous voices?
I hope so. You know, it'd be a good thing to be in the same category as James Earl Jones.
Principal photography officially began at Leavesden Studios on 26 June 1997. Lucas had not directed a feature in over 20 years.
I take it you say action?
I'll say action.
You don't?
Sometimes I forget.
People forget.
If I forget to say action or cut, just step in and say action and cut.
3 months later, Lucas called That's a Wrap. With over 20 months to complete the complex special effects before the release. Details from the shoot came in drips from official sources like the Star Wars Insider magazine, where each issue would have a Q&A with producer Rick McCallum. He would tease details, while internet sleuths would uncover a host of character names when Lucasfilm registered some 50 domain names, all linking back to the official website. But not all news was good news. An online rumour got traction when a spy named Holden Caulfield revealed that, due to a technical issue with the camera, much of the footage shot was unusable, a fact that seemed to be confirmed by reshoots in early 1998, although these had already been planned. Throughout 1998, every publication wanted a spin on the rumour mill. Tomart's Action Figure Digest suggested that, due to extensive post-production, the release date had been pushed from May to November. The Daily Mirror reported on an overheard exchange between two extras chatting in a pub, who revealed that Lucas had bought the land in Tunisia because it means he can blow it up. He's making 3 more Star Wars movies and sees it as a worthwhile investment. It was exciting to hear Adrian Dunbar appearing on a late-night talk show, speaking of blue screens and fight scenes and a 3-film commitment. His scenes, however, as Bail Organa, ended up on the cutting room floor, and he was recast in subsequent films. Lucas, talking to Wired magazine, addressed the online rumours. Where legitimate media is maybe 35% truth and the rest made up, the internet is about 10% truth. Newsweek magazine landed in controversy when they reported on the rumours that Jake Lloyd's acting was so bad that he had been given the on-set nickname Mannequin Skywalker. This led Ron Howard to write a response criticising the magazine for publishing unsubstantiated rumour without a care for the child who could read this. As 1998 rolled around, franchise blockbusters were not the dominant force they are today. For example, the 2018 US box office top 10 saw 6 direct sequels, 3 spin-off franchise movies, and 1 remake. Compare that to 2 decades earlier, where there was not a single sequel. But there was James Cameron's Titanic. It was the first film to gross over $1 billion worldwide and took the box office crown that had been held by either Spielberg or Lucas for a quarter of a century.
I'm the king of the world!
Sequels in the 80s and 90s had generally been defined by the laws of diminishing returns, but Star Wars was different. If there was one film that could sink Titanic, it was Star Wars with George Lucas back in the director's chair.
You know, we're never going to beat Titanic. Nobody can.
Can you explain that?
Nobody can. It's one of those things. It just happens. It's like what Star Wars did when it first did it. It defies reality.
While Lucas was not convinced the film would beat Titanic, there was no doubt it was still going to be box office gold. And, with a year to release, there was still no confirmation on which studio would profit from distributing the film. Burnt by the studio system while making the first 3 films, Lucas had taken to financing his films himself to keep 100% control, but he still needed a big studio to handle the release. Just as Hasbro had been desperate to sign a deal at any price, 20th Century Fox felt the same way, with studio executive Tom Sherrack laying his cards on the table in the Los Angeles Daily News. "We'll lock the door and won't let him out until we have a deal." In April 1998, Fox CEO Peter Sherin announced a deal had been done and claimed a truly historic day for the company and its employees. With the studio in place, attention turned to the trailer and what film it could possibly be attached to. The first suspect was Fox's summer release of the X-Files movie, and while audiences finally got to see aliens and spacecraft, it was not the ones they were hoping for. StarWars.com had shifted from the original trilogy and was now heavily promoting Episode 1. Lynn's Diary was a first-of-its-kind web series presented by Lucasfilm's head of publicity, Lynn Hale, which shared updates and unprecedented access to the filmmaking process. Where in the past Charlie Lippincott had been sent out to conventions to meet with fans and publicise the upcoming films, now the official website was able to address fans on a global scale. On the 25th of September 1998, without any flair or fanfare, StarWars.com ended months of speculation and announced the title. George Lucas has decided to name the film Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. The title was met with immediate fan reaction and sent website comment sections and news groups into a spiral of the 5 stages of grief. The first is denial.
Am I the only one who gets it? Phantom Ghost? The title itself is a clue that it's fake. The title is a menace to those that will make counterfeit merchandise.
The second is anger.
How can someone who created such cool movies think of a shitty-ass title like that? It sounds like the name of some ballet or opera, not sci-fi. George, wake the F up.
After that comes fear.
Oh, why do I get the feeling this movie is gonna blow chunks? I mean, what else can you think when Lucas picked such a friggin' hokey title? Just think of all the things he could have chosen.
Bargaining.
No. This is a bad title. The Phantom Menace. Please no. George Lucas knows better than that, I think. Please don't let that be the title.
And finally, acceptance.
I have complete faith in George Lucas and the job he's doing on the new movies. But damn, that title sucks.
October continued with large leaks appearing on different websites. Ain't It Cool News got hold of a shooting script revealing the opening crawl and first line of dialogue. Fansite Dark Horizons got hold of a shot-by-shot description of the trailer, while Lynn Hale had given up denying rumours. It's more fun for the fans to speculate.
Yep, the Star Wars Phantom Menace trailer is here.
These were the early days of the internet, so when a new trailer was released, your only hope of seeing it was at the cinema. So when word got out that the trailer would screen before Meet Joe Black, The Waterboy and The Siege, fans flocked to screenings to see the trailer, and then flocked back out again before the film even started.
You actually paid to go in to see a movie just to see the trailer, and then you left?
Yes, because it's an awesome 2.5 minutes.
Exciting, huh? And we want to know what you think. You can let us know what you're excited about as the new Star Wars movie approaches by clicking over to our ET website.
While the title had been universally dismissed, the trailer pushed the hype into overdrive.
Man, I'm kind of pissed. First off, I couldn't hear jack of the trailer because all the damned geeks were screaming.
It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Although,
didn't that one shot look kinda wacky racist to you?
in an attempt to stop bootlegging, Lucas allowed the trailer to be posted online, but without a dedicated video streaming site, the only way to see the trailer was to download a low-resolution version on Real Player, taking hours over slow dial-up and risking losing the whole thing if someone picked up the phone. Nonetheless, the trailer had over 2 million downloads. For the first time, a movie trailer was being broken down and discussed in online forums. Fan sites had the advantage that they could react in real time, posting multiple still images, while magazines like Starlog were often left weeks behind commenting on the latest revelations. Apple staffers, disappointed by the image quality of the first trailer, seized the opportunity to promote their software and signed a deal with Lucasfilm to release the second trailer exclusively on QuickTime, a deal that led to 600,000 downloads of the QuickTime player and 3.5 million trailer downloads in the first 5 days, in what Steve Jobs described as the biggest internet download event in history. This made Apple the go-to place to see trailers for upcoming films. As 1999 rolled around, Vanity Fair published an exclusive Annie Leibovitz photo shoot and interview to promote the film. The biggest takeaway was that Lucas was no longer considering episodes 7, 8 and 9.
There was never a script or a story, so I have the vaguest idea what would happen in 7 through 9. And I really don't think they'll ever get made because I would be like 90 years old by the time I got them finished.
But behind the stories, there was fear that the film would not live up to the impossible hype that had already started building. Ain't It Cool News insider spy Moriarty tried to allay fears with his take on the characters based on the script he had got his hands on.
Man, oh man, do I love R2's introduction into this film. Terrence Stamp should be fascinating to see here. As iconic as Neo before Zod has become, this may be the role that earns Stamp his permanent place in genre history. Anakin Skywalker? God, I love this kid. I am delighted to report that Jar Jar not only works, but the Gungans as a whole are a welcome addition to the Star Wars mythology.
Hasbro was already building anticipation for the saga with new sculpts of popular characters that reflected those in the upcoming film with a flashback pack-in. In a promotion that deliberately echoed the past, you could send away 6 proof of purchases and receive the first figure of Samuel L. Jackson's Mace Windu, while a beautifully displayed Stap and battle droid with artwork from concept artist Doug Chiang went on sale in toy shops.
Fear.
Fear attracts the fearful.
Perhaps because of the fan reaction to the title, much of the marketing focused more heavily on this being the first film in the saga. This can be seen in a series of tone poems delivered by the film's principal cast.
There are things I cannot do, but there are certainly things I will do.
Hinting at the idea that this new trilogy was not just about groundbreaking special effects, but character.
What if dreams came true? But dreams do come true, don't they?
These tone poems also played on a loop in toy stores like London's famous Hamleys as part of their display, which also consisted of a full-scale vulture droid. Hasbro knew the toys were going to be a hot commodity and were not going to get caught short as they did back in 1977. Strict rules from Lucasfilm meant that merchandise was not to go on sale before May 3rd. This meant that the launch party at a Los Angeles book show for the many tie-in books could not actually show any of the 500 invited guests the products. Instead, they were given the books in a box with a combination lock.
Each person will then be able to go up and ring that number on Sunday night at 12 o'clock and get the combination, open it up and see the books.
We are unable to determine what the demand could be for product that Monday morning. Stores should have a contingency plan for crowd control.
Shops like Toys R Us and FAO Schwartz ran Midnight Madness, which had fans queuing up to be the first to get their hands on the new toys.
She's actually going to hurl me over everybody else. We're going to do kind of a Shaolin Kung Fu technique that we've been practicing all week. It's going to be very entertaining.
With those at the front of the line being awarded a certificate for their nerdiness. Excuse me, enthusiasm.
We are the dorks of the century.
Hasbro embraced the fans' obsession with collecting variations and released the film's cannon fodder battle droids with 4 different paint jobs. The new improved sculpts were the result of actors having their faces scanned and, for the first time, extra articulation was added so the Jedi could hold their lightsaber in battle poses with 2 hands. There was even something for the girls.
Queen Amidala, let's get her ready.
So many different looks. No time to waste. She's got to take on the Trade Federation. Star Wars, now it's your universe.
But there was a clear favourite that those in line were desperate to get their hands on.
Oh yeah, Darth Maul. He's the bad guy with the double-edged lightsaber, and he's the one I'm coming here to see. Driven by the popularity of the character, Darth Maul became instantly collectible, leading to Hasbro shipping cases of nothing but the Sith Lord to mitigate demand.
I'm really excited. I've waited on this for 16 years, and I'm just couldn't be more excited about the new figures coming out. I've really been waiting on them for a long time.
Avoiding the pitfalls in a history of terrible console game movie tie-ins, LucasArts developed Pod Racer and a role-play game alongside the more educational Pit Droids and Gungan Frontier for the younger kids. Board game enthusiasts were not to be left out, with Battle for Naboo and Episode 1 collector's editions of Monopoly and Trivial Pursuit. Not that there wasn't already merchandise clogging up the shelves, from overpriced dueling money boxes to the Jar Jar Binks tongue lollipop.
Oh, here we go. These are genuine Darth Maul pants.
Oh, yeah.
Beware the dark side.
Across the world, Episode 1 characters were being slapped over dozens of products. Lead sponsor Pepsi produced 24 collectible character cans and the relatively bland mail-away collector cards with a puzzle on the back and... Oh, it's Darth Maul! Building on the success of Taco Bell's special edition promotion, marketing expanded to KFC and Pizza Hut, each representing a different planet in the new film. This gave the hardcore fans the opportunity to collect no less than 30 different kids' meal toys, whose boxes, when stacked up, made a colourful collage of the universe. With all the merchandise and product tie-ins, it was certain that The Phantom Menace would be the first film in history to make a profit before a single ticket was even sold.
Next to getting married, whenever that happens, this is the biggest thing. And I just can't wait to see my credit card go like berserk over here.
If the emphasis on shop shelves was on the side of quantity, the cinema experience was on that of quality. With the new film came a new sound standard, Dolby Digital Surround EX, which added a rear center channel and would require cinemas to spend thousands on upgrading their screens, a price worth paying since Lucasfilm were dictating that only the best screens would be licensed to show the film. This ultimately meant that, despite unprecedented interest, Episode 1 would appear on fewer screens than recent blockbusters Jurassic Park, The Lost World and Godzilla. The theatrical demands didn't end there. It was stipulated that The Phantom Menace must stay on the same screen for a minimum of 12 weeks. There were to be no paid on-screen advertisements, and trailers were to be limited to 8 minutes, which had to include Fox's own For the Beach and Anna and the King. To prevent scalping, there were to be no advance ticket sales, although this was later relaxed, with customers limited to purchasing only 12 tickets. With international markets forced to wait months to see the film, some impatient fans booked package holidays to the States that included tickets to an opening night screening. Other movies accepted their fate and pushed their release schedules to avoid clashing with the prequel.
Now, the saga will continue.
You were expecting someone else?
You see only one movie this summer, see Star Wars. But if you see 2 movies, see Austin Powers.
That's right, Mr. Bigglesworth.
Only DreamWorks' The Love Letter dared to compete and open on the same day, perhaps banking on the fact that women not interested in sci-fi fantasy would need a rom-com.
I can't wait for that to come out.
With the second trailer, attention turned to getting tickets. This was, after all, a film everyone was going to see, and if you weren't quick to book a seat, it could be weeks before you would be able to see the film.
It's gonna be a zoo. For the next month, it's gonna be a zoo.
And so it was on April 6th, more than a month before the film's release, a line started to form outside Mann's Chinese Theatre in LA. Camping out and rotating in shifts, people were able to keep track of the line on the website countingdown.com. Without smartphones, the line organisers had to bring their whole PC out onto the street to provide up-to-the-minute updates.
What do you folks think about this?
Actually, my mother is very supportive. You know, she comes by, she says hi, she totally understands. I mean, I've been planning this for several years.
Queues continued to spring up in major cities all over the United States, from San Francisco to Chicago to New York.
Tell me who this fellow is. Are you Darth Maul by chance?
Yes, I am. I am Darth Maul.
Where the line outside the Ziegfeld cinema started on May 1st was declared the official line cinema because they would be getting the film 3 hours ahead of the one in LA.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Of course, queuing wasn't for everyone.
Since I didn't have time to go myself, I've had someone waiting in line for us to make sure that we get tickets.
It was estimated that 2.2 million people would play Wookie Hookie or come down with Phantom Flu, skipping work and school to watch the film on opening day, costing the US economy an estimated $293 million. In order to give fans a head start on the weekend, the release date was moved up from the 21st of May to the 19th.
Now here's another way that the new Star Wars will affect money matters across America. The Wall Street Journal reports that some businesses are shutting down on May 19th. That's the movie's opening day, so that their employees can go see it.
For those who couldn't commit to over a month of queuing outside a cinema, there was the first Star Wars Celebration, a weekend-long event held at the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum in Denver. The event was almost cancelled due to the Columbine shooting in a nearby suburb. Suddenly a celebration didn't seem like such a great idea to Lucasfilm. But fan club president and organiser Dan Madsen argued that cancelling would send the wrong message, and instead they could use the opportunity to raise money for the victims and allow Star Wars fans the opportunity to pay tribute to them. The event kicked off with a minute's silence, and over the weekend, tens of thousands of dollars were raised, a sum matched by Lucasfilm and Hasbro.
And nobody should sleep until
Episode 1, The Phantom Menace comes out.
Unperturbed by the worst rainstorms in 100 years, fans flocked to Celebration.
Harrison Ford, eat your heart out.
Where they were treated to behind-the-scenes footage, props, life-size models, appearances from actors such as Anthony Daniels, Ray Park and Jake Lloyd, and the debut of the Duel of the Fates, the first new John Williams Star Wars music in 16 years.
Advance tickets for the new Star Wars film went on sale this afternoon.
Get to your ships!
In preparation for the demand, MoviePhone boosted its online capacity to allow for 10 times more visitors. Phone capacity was increased by 30%, but it wasn't enough. Phone lines jammed, the website crashed, and the line outside Mann's Chinese Theatre stretched well beyond Hollywood Boulevard, a scene that was echoed across America.
This is a sad moment for the folks who've been here for 6 weeks. They've been ordered to remove their chairs so that they can queue up a little more tightly.
The next day, tickets were appearing online for as much as $600.
Apollo here was offered $1,500 for his single ticket and his place in line, but he figures that with 550 hours in line, that's only about $3 an hour. It's just not worth it.
George Lucas and the cast did a media blitz. Entertainment Tonight dedicated a week to coverage.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to walk away disappointed from this movie. It is spectacular.
And every newspaper and magazine who had obeyed Lucasfilm's strict rules about not printing spoilers were treated to exclusive photos and interviews. Star Wars was on the cover of everything, sometimes multiple covers for collectors.
It could be George Lucas on the screen in his bathrobe watching football. People would still go nuts.
Despite negative reviews leaking out of the preview screenings and the premiere, fans and box office bean counters remained optimistic, with some cinemas planning to stay open for 24 hours straight to accommodate the demand. After all, Shaquille O'Neal seemed to like it.
I think it was an excellent movie. I think Mr. Lucas did a fabulous job. Special effects were wonderful, and the storyline was wonderful. And we'll probably come back and watch it a couple more times.
This is kind of the Woodstock. This is kind of the, let's just forget everything and just have a good time.
Finally, the day arrived. Excited fans dressed up as their favorite characters and, wielding plastic lightsabers, flocked into cinemas to take their seat as the clock ticked down to 12:01.
This is fucking awesome.
Yeah!
No critique was ever going to stop someone from seeing The Phantom Menace, which was good news for the box office as the reviews were pretty mixed. Newspaper critics were often ready to stick the knife in, declaring, "May the farce be with you," while film magazines like Empire, who depended on exclusives to sell copies, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Make of that what you will. US film critic Roger Ebert was positive.
This movie is a remarkable achievement, a marriage of imagination and special effects, and my thumb is up with a lot of admiration.
While E! Online lamented that being amazed has never been this boring.
It was so intense. I mean, my heart was beating. It's still beating now.
I think that little Anakin Skywalker, and everyone's going to say it, stole that movie.
From news reports at the time, it seems most audiences were satisfied with the movie.
It was amazing. It was everything I thought it was going to be and more.
While a few others were ready to declare it worst film ever.
Thumbs way down.
You didn't like it?
No, I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
One nameless member of the Dark Corners team, who saw it no less than 10 times in the cinema, recalls the enthusiastic audience at a midnight screening who were almost on their feet when Obi-Wan rushed out to face Darth Maul in the climactic lightsaber duel. The Phantom Menace went on to break records, becoming the fastest film to make $100 million, and was, unsurprisingly, the highest-grossing film of the year. But failed to overtake Titanic.
I'm the king of the world!
The 1999 box office as a whole was a giant success. with sequels from Austin Powers, Toy Story and James Bond, to breakout debuts like M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. There were successful franchise openers, The Mummy, The Matrix and American Pie. Rom-coms Notting Hill and Shakespeare in Love performed well, and alongside the studio movies in the top 10 stood The Blair Witch Project, a film with a cast and crew of unknowns made for $60,000, grossing over $250 million, thanks in large part to clever utilisation of the internet for cost-effective marketing.
Is that legal?
Within 2 days of release, pirate copies of The Phantom Menace were being sold in the Far East for a couple of dollars. Customers in the UK could expect to pay £50 for a cam-shot pirate copy, but with 2 months till release, this price soon came down. Lucasfilm warned ISPs they would pursue copyright infringements of the film, but that didn't stop an MPEG of the movie being shared via universities' high-speed internet. The problem with an international day and date release is the production cost and the delivery of film reels to the cinema. Lucas saw a future for digital distribution, and The Phantom Menace became the first major motion picture to be screened digitally, albeit only on 4 screens. Lucas predicted that by the time Attack of the Clones was released in 2002, there would be 2,000 digital screens. There were 19. Today, however, digital screens are standard, so when a blockbuster opens, it is as cheap and easy to screen simultaneously on 20 screens as it is to screen on 1. Among the many criticisms levelled at The Phantom Menace was its over-reliance on computer-generated images, in part due to how the new CGI technology was being used to market the film.
Well, ultimately, you know, it's like 2 movies. We shot the entire film live, and then we animated the entire film. So you're watching an animated film and a live-action film both at the same time.
A closer look reveals that in many ways, Episode 1 was also the last hurrah for practical effects. The new computer technology was so costly and time-consuming, Lucas had to determine what needed to be done with computers over what could be done with computers. This meant that Yoda remained a puppet, and state-of-the-art animatronics were used for many of the aliens. Stunts were performed rather than using digital doubles. There were location shoots and giant sets were built at the Pinewood Studios, alongside scale miniatures at ILM. The people in the stands at the pod race, for example, were painted Q-tips. Although many ships were rendered in a computer, explosions were often still practical. Not that the computer-generated images were not groundbreaking. Jar Jar Binks pushed the performance capture technology far beyond anything that had gone before, allowing for future characters like Gollum, Neytiri, and Thanos. Building on the techniques developed in editing the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, Lucas was able to bring more flexibility to the editing room.
If we can split one actor from one take, you know, resyncing with everybody else, we're doing lots of that. Normally you reject whole shots because one thing is wrong, but now you can keep the good things in that shot and just throw away the bad.
Combining takes or rendering brand new shots, such as this establishing shot, from elements collected from different scenes.
Cyber directing, right?
Yeah, 3D editing.
Yeah.
Using the morphing technology developed for Willow, Lucas would later push this style of editing to change the timing of an actor's performance within a shot. With digital editing and distribution, it made sense to Lucas that he should also extend into digital capture. While on the set of The Phantom Menace, Lucas tested Sony's new HDC 750 and used the digitally shot footage seamlessly in the finished film. The cost savings were obvious. The Phantom Menace had shot 1.2 million feet of film at a cost of $684,000. By comparison, Attack of the Clones, the first major motion picture to be shot digitally, only spent $15,000 on HD tape stock. In the same way that Star Wars had inspired a generation of filmmakers, The Phantom Menace helped pioneer the tools that would allow indie filmmakers to produce professional-looking films on smaller budgets. The internet voice became a double-edged sword that on the one hand had given a megaphone to the hype machine and allowed fans to connect over a shared passion, but on the other, was quick to respond with heated criticism, with anti-Jar Jar websites springing up almost immediately. The level of hate projected towards Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd led to difficult times for both actors. Jake Lloyd quit acting due to bullying from classmates and has since been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Ahmed Best spoke candidly about how he almost committed suicide due to fan reaction.
There was just so much hate and venom and anger directed at me.
He has, however, continued to play Jar Jar in cartoons and multimedia, and was given a standing ovation on his return to Star Wars Celebration in 2019.
Jar Jar fans, you're here, yes?
Everyone is so wonderful and so very positive, you know?
But it wasn't just actors in the film. Footage of Ghislaine Raza wielding a golf ball retriever like Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber was uploaded to the internet in 2003, making the student, now dubbed the Star Wars Kid, an instant global meme and an early victim of cyberbullying. The video itself was given many remixes, spoofed on shows like American Dad and The Colbert Report.
I'd better use my lightsaber to fight it!
And viewed well over 1 billion times. Lucas, of course, went on to finish the trilogy, but was no doubt disheartened by fan vitriol.
You go to make a movie and all you do is get criticized, and people try to make decisions about what you're going to do before you do it. You know, it's not much fun, and you can't experiment. You can't do anything. You have to do it a certain way.
He had always maintained Star Wars was for kids.
But when you see all these little kids and you see the look on their face and what it means to them, it forgives everything.
And as much as the advances in technology motivated the production of a new film, making something for his own kids was also behind it.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna buzz his hair just like yours.
The production company created to make the prequels was named after his 3 children, Jet, Amanda and Katie. In behind-the-scenes footage, his children are frequently seen on set. He involved them in the naming of characters, most notably the Gungans, and throughout the prequels they all have small cameos. Perhaps with his kids grown up, Lucas no longer had need for fairy tales and sold the franchise to Disney for $4 billion in 2012, almost 40 years after the studio had rejected his pitch for the first film. What started on websites and in newsgroups as a hobby has now taken to YouTube, where nerd culture has been mainstreamed and fans can make a living from trailer breakdowns, fan theories, reviews, deep dives into the lore, and of course, hate. So much hate.
The pressure is, not that great actually. I know the really high expectations of some of the fans and everything I can't possibly meet, so.
Well, that's really what
I simply don't worry about it, because there's nothing I can do about it. Once you get your expectations so high, there's no way you can meet them.
Looking back, how could any film live up to that much hype? No other film in history had been so anticipated.
I've been waiting 15 years since Return of the Jedi came out.
This was a film that had been teased for 20 years.
How did my father die?
And combined an audience desperately trying to cling to their childhood as they faced the reality of being a grown-up. Must-see blockbusters now come around so fast, audiences barely have enough time to get excited about one before it is pushed out of the cinema by the next. Conventions that were once niche events have now been taken over by studios to launch their next slate of films and TV shows. While online, nerd culture seems to be in a state of perpetual hype, where the biggest thing about a major franchise release is not the film itself, but the post-credits tease that hypes the next. For all its faults, The Phantom Menace was at least as influential as A New Hope, creating the world of film fandom we know today, which may not always be the best legacy, but it has certainly proved a lasting one. Thanks for watching, and as always, a special thanks to our Patreons for making videos like this possible. Please check out our other Star Wars videos and share your memories of the late 90s Star Wars hype in the comments below. We'd love to hear about them.